Welcome back to the What Life, guys. I've really been looking forward to this one. This is the Z Monthly Racing Series. This is the fifth and final crit race for the series, and we are in Scotland for 6 laps of the Scotland-Glasgow crit course. 3, 2, 1, let's roll. There's some chat before, just talking about me filming this for YouTube, and a few other guys I think were filming it as well. There's not as many people in this one. Usually there's 80, 90 people. I've been away filming with Komoot actually in Austria. So I've just got back. This is my last chance to get this done before they swap to a different series of races. We're off, we're rolling, all's good. There's 29 people, I think, in the race itself. And I really like the Scotland course because I know it has a couple of lumps in it, which are, a few small chances to break up the group and for things to happen, and that's what makes racing a little bit more exciting, even if it is 6 laps of the same course. So I'll take you around the first lap because then you get an idea for the course, because the course actually plays quite a big role in how this race pans out. Like I said, I've been away for Monday through Friday in Austria filming with Komoot, and we've been doing a bit of a bike packing, leisure cycling project out there. So whilst we were cycling, I was on an e-bike filming, and it was all very casual, so it was quite enjoyable. But still got some miles in, but I didn't really get any training in this week. So I came into this actually feeling quite fresh, which was a good thing. I don't think the Chinese I had last night really helped, because that basically almost repeated on me when it came to the final finish. But anyway, you can see on the map on the top, you might have just missed it, a couple of guys drop off. So the lead pack, I think, is around 22 to 24 people, which is a pretty good group. I'll point out now, I'll say from the off, I average 3.2 watts per kg, normalized power 259, and my average wattage not normalized was 249, I think. Obviously the hills play a little bit of a role in changing that normalized power. I really like this course. I actually don't know it that well, so this first loop was actually just me getting to familiarize myself with the loop. The reason I like this race, guys, and I think you should stick around, is because the chat and me diving in the chat once again kind of has this effect on changing the dynamic of the race, changing the way people kind of react to things. And I really love doing it because people do read the chat even if they're not willing to write in it, or they're too busy cycling to write in it, or they don't have the companion app, or maybe they don't have their mobile near them, or an iPad or whatever. But I do think people quite enjoy it, or people definitely read it. And it does play a bit of a role. Someone just saying that in real life that bridge in Glasgow stinks. So this is the part of the course that's really interesting because it's a couple of lumps. So this is the first lump up here, flattens off, that's 3%. Then you get this little flat section, and you can see I'm holding 200 watts. I'm just getting rid of that power up. And then you kick into this slightly bigger lump, 7%, 8%, 9%. And you can see that, a little kick of 400 odd watts just to kind of make sure I keep my position. A few guys using their feathers. Nothing really happens on the first lap, but it's like a real good kind of gauge as to, how people are riding the hills and what their approach is going to be, and who's going to kind of be in the thick of it come the back end or the business end of the race. There's 2 power ups on the course, one at the start of the loop and one at the top of that hill. And that's very important because obviously you can use a power up on the hill, and then you can also pick another one up just after you go through the start line. This little downhill comes into another little kicker. Again, this is 6%. Cool, 6%. So we don't lose anyone if you look at the map, or there is a couple of people that might have fallen off, but I think the group ends up being about 21 people, which is a pretty good sized group. And because it is 18k, 11 and a bit miles, there's quite a lot of work to do if you're going to drop people, because it's not really long enough. So dropping people is going to be quite hard, and this is why I find it really interesting, is because this is when I dive in the chat at some point. So we'll take you through the first lap, and then we'll kind of skip ahead to what I consider the more interesting point of the race. But you might notice that my wattage is kind of around about 200 watts. I never really felt like it was pushing too hard. Heart rate 145. Someone throwing in the chat that they're actually going to race this course at the end of the ICU 6th of August. They do 6 laps to finish a 220k event. But this is the last little kicker in the loop, which again this becomes and plays a big role in the final laps. A very short 7% kick, and then still kind of flattens out, and then you kind of go into this point here. So pay attention, because we are pretty close to what is the finish line, and this is obviously a series of loops at the end of the first lap. This will be very important on the last lap for positioning on when you want to go and when you want to ride off. But again, have a look at the wattage, 160, 180, nothing too crazy. I was very happy to sit in the group for the first lap. I think this paid a lot of dividends. Someone's ridden off the front. I don't think that's going to make any difference. At the time, I remember thinking that's not going to make any difference. There's no point using a ghost and riding off the front on lap 1, because you probably will get caught, even though someone, I think, does go and chase them down. And there's the finish banner there, right. That's when you pick up your second power-up, or your first power-up, depends which way you look at it. So I dived in the chat. We've skipped right ahead to the end of lap 3. I start diving in the chat, talking about how on the second lap, we actually dropped, and you can see on the map at the top, we dropped 1 or 2 riders going up the hill, and they couldn't quite keep with the pace. So I dived in the chat and said, look, the group split a little bit on that hill. How about we push the hill a little bit on this lap, come into lap 4, and see whether we can get the group to split a bit more, because that way we'll have less people when it comes down to the sprint and just thins the group out a bit. And I think no one replied, but I think they did pay attention. So if you now start looking at our wattage, the wattage ends up kind of creeping up above 250 for most of the loop, which is quite interesting. So I'd thrown it out there saying, look, we dropped a few people on the hill last time. What about we give it a bit of an effort this time? Just see what happens, see whether we can shake it up a bit. And no one replies. And then I say, let's dog the hill, let's work the hill. But when you say that, when you encourage people to do things, the pace in general just picks up. So if you tell people, like, oh, I think we should work this, or da-da-da, people might not reply, but they see it, and they all want to make sure that they are not falling off the back. So they work to get to the middle of the pack. Look, we're just nudging 300 watts for a little bit there. And then that changes the whole dynamic of the ride, because no one wants to be at the back, so they kind of work to get in the middle, but the guys in the middle are then working and they end up at the front. And then the speed of the group just speeds up as we reel in this cyclist here. But yeah, like our wattage has nudged up to 70, and we're not even at the hill yet. And, I'd said, let's work the hill. And we're working before we even get there, which I thought was quite cool. The interesting thing is what happens after this lap, because this lap we work a little bit, and then the pace comes right off for the penultimate lap, as you might imagine, because no one wants to really try and ride on their threshold from 3 laps out. But you can see just nudging 290 watts. Here comes the first hill up to 300. I wanted to position myself pretty well. What I'd like to do is work the flat bit so you keep the momentum into this second hill. So 300 watts, 300 watts, 300 watts. Use a power up. Drop into the second hill, 8-9%. Hold the wattage. Little kick. Let it come off towards the top. And then once you get over the top, just a little kick again. There we go, 400 watts. And that's what I found kind of, if you position yourself really well coming into that hill, you don't have to come off the top first, but you're definitely not falling off the back of the group. Now keep an eye on the map top right. It kind of strings out a little bit, tiny bit. So obviously these hills are what are kind of affecting some of the riders. You look at the map now, few riders might have fallen off the back. And then we get our second little kicker. 1 rider's definitely fallen off the back, maybe 2. Second kicker, hold the wattage, guys coming through, nice, everyone works hard, boom. And then you look at the map, and a couple of guys falling off, and this is what I was wanting, is just to break the group up, make some guys who can't just sit at the back and try and save it for a sprint or something like that work. And then this kind of carries the group through, and I thought this was a really cool little example of just changing the dynamic of the race. And then my positioning I was quite happy with, although I probably worked 164 on the heart rate. Started to work a little bit, and I realized this. I was like, okay, look, the group's broken up. If you look now, group's broken up. We dropped maybe 3 riders. I said, let's make it stick now. Then the guys all come through again, which is nice, because once you make a move, if you don't hold the wattage, then guys can ride back on. I wanted to try and avoid that. So I said work, and then I dropped to the back and sit to the back. But we're still holding, 250, 260 watts, some good wattage coming through this section. Last little kicker up the hill. I think I probably use my power up if I'm smart, or maybe I save it. But yep, in the thick of the group, nice positioning. I thought that worked out really well. I was pretty happy with that. Look at the map now. That's at least 4 or 5 riders dropped off. 300 watts, 165 on the HR, so working a little bit, nothing too crazy. And then end up just sitting at the front again, and my wattage kind of comes off. I'm like, okay, right, let the guys. I don't want to ride off the front. That's not the point. We skip this last lap, the second last lap, because it's pointless. So we come into the last lap, guys. Here we go, boom, last lap. That second last lap was a bit soft on the wattage, if you ask me. I think the effort of breaking the group up, then we came off a little bit. That was nice, very well played. I really enjoyed the dynamic of that. I thought that rode pretty well, and then I kind of relaxed to let my heart rate come back down. So I'm holding 160 HR, 161, sat pretty kind of comfortably in the group. Probably working a bit too hard. I didn't need to ride off the front here, but at the same time, I wanted to keep the group moving forward. I also wanted to position myself well on the hills in case anyone decided to go. There is one guy, if you look at the map top right, has ridden off the front. Someone did dive in the chat and said, hey, let's just make sure he doesn't get away. And I kind of, in the back of my mind, I didn't say anything. I just kind of knew that there was no way he was going to ride off the front with 1.5 miles to go unless he was actually just completely in the wrong group. And you see him slowly coming back to the group there now. So we knew he wasn't, well, I personally, I kind of comfortably knew that I didn't think he was going to ride off solo. He comes back to the group and I think maybe just drops through as kind of, he's a bit spent, or maybe he dives on the back, who knows. I don't know what blue flag means, Pete, but thanks for diving in and throwing that out. Anyway, yeah, I think that guy who rode off the front has kind of given up the goose on that and just drops through the pack and is like, all right, probably did too much too soon. But then again, we're coming into the double hill, this little double hill, like small hill, then flatten off, and then slightly larger hill. Wanted to keep my positioning, wanting to work this quite hard. I think a few guys probably used their power-ups too early. There's no point using it there. It's kind of pointless. If I had a feather, I wouldn't use it until we actually got to the actual climb itself. Seems a bit too early for me. Same with the aero power-up. Anyway, drop some wattage here, guys. Here you go, power-up, drop some wattage, 550, 580, 600 watts. A little kick up the hill to stay on that front group just in case they decide to do anything. No one really does. I think on the mini-map, no one's ridden off the front. Really good grouping, pretty happy with my positioning. Just try and hold on to it. 165 HR, so you can tell it's hotting up. Coming down the hill, happy with where I am. No one's ridden off the front. Group has broken up. Look at the map top right. Lost a few people. We're down to maybe 12 riders up front, and which is quite nice. Cool. We're heading into the sprint. One more little kick up the hill. Wattage dives back up, 400. And then this is where I knew, right, let's get positioning. Ride this bit well and put the effort in to kind of keep in that kind of front 5-6 people. That was the whole plan. And then basically see what we had towards the finish. And I'm obviously holding on to my aero for the finish line push. Some guy comes through. I think a few guys probably make a few little attacks. 0.7 of a mile. So just, here we go, like a kilometre out. 1,000 meters to go. A little downhill. Pace is still on. Heart rate still reasonably high. Nothing crazy yet. But I think once we come down off this hill, go round the corner, we've got one more incline, and then it's the finish. Two left-handers towards the finish. And you can see that this is basically the group. Everyone that you are seeing now is the group that's going to be involved in this final push. Maybe 14 of us. I'm not going to bother counting, but so we've got a couple of corners, and then we go up a hill. And then I want to just make sure that I was in the thick of it. So work the hill, push, here we go. 600 watts, pretty happy with that. Good positioning. Some guy uses his feather that I thought was quite early, but he rides it pretty well and holds on to it. And he keeps the kick, and he kicks it hard. So I'm like, this is when we start working, guys. Heart rate's going to go up. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us riding off the front. Feather has taken it out very well. I think I was pretty late on using my power up. I should have got in it earlier. There it goes, power up. 600 watts, battling with this guy on my right. And my sprint is kind of terrible, but getting better. I think I nudged maybe 790 watts. I see him kind of settle off and lose it a bit. And then there we go, that was it. Pretty happy with that. I think that's a third place finish for me. I can't complain. 153 average watts. normalised to something a bit higher because of the hills. And yeah, and then you see here, I thought this was interesting, the timeline. You can kind of see the little kickers on the hills. That lap 3, they kind of, we pushed a bit, you can see that, and then obviously we finished kickers. Well done guys, love that one, really happy with the podium. I'll see you on the next one.